a series on socially responsible technologies. I am Susie Babka of the Department of Theology and Religious Studies and the Element Chair of Technology and the Humanities here at the Humanities Center. I am really thrilled about some of all of our speakers, but I'm really thrilled that we're having a space to be able to discuss what it means to think about responsibility and technology here on campus as we try to think forward in time, and maybe not so forward in terms of how these technologies are impacting us. And I had a whole thing on responsibility and what that means and what it means to care about what technology is doing to our humanity and all those things, but I am not going to bore all of you with that. I will just move right on because I'm so grateful to Nikki, Usher, for coming in and giving us their talk on a Slate article that was published in May. And I think that I was really impressed by the article. And so if you're looking for the article, all you have to do is go to slate.com, just type in Nikki Usher, and all of their articles for Slate come up. Nikki is an associate professor here at the University of San Diego in the Department of Communication. Dr. Usher's research focuses on news in the changing digital environment, blending insights from media sociology and political communication. In 2022, Dr. Usher received a New Directions Fellowship from the Mellon Foundation. They are a senior fellow at the Open Market Institute Center for Journalism and Liberty. Dr. Usher is the author of 3 books: Making News at the New York Times, which was published by University of Michigan Press in 2014, Interactive Journalism, Hackers, Data, and Code, published by the University of Illinois Press in 2016, and News for the Rich, White, and Blue, How Place and Power Distort American Journalism, published by Columbia Press in 2021, and co-editor of Journalism Research That Matters, published in 2021 from Oxford, with Valerie Belair-Gagnon. Prior to USD, Dr. Usher was a professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign in the College of Media Journalism's department, with affiliate appointments in the communication and political science, and an assistant and associate professor at the George Washington University School of Media and Public Affairs. They also co-edit the Oxford University Press series, Journalism and Political Communication Unbound, with Daniel Kreis. And so I'd love to introduce Dr. Usher.
Do I need to stand here? Or?
The mic will pick you up wherever you
Okay. Closer.
I'm sorry, I was incorrect.
Oh, I can hold it. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. That made me feel really awesome about myself. So very pleased to be here. I teach a class here called Surviving Social Media. It's a class I've taught since 2011, and part of it is not so much about surviving social media, it's about understanding big technology and how to make good and deliberate choices about, we can't escape the fact that we may absolutely actually need to order something from Amazon. But what are the trade-offs and what's happening, and how can we be socially responsible and aware? So part of this is, even though my research specific nuanced research interest isn't AI or big tech, it is very much immersed in part of my pedagogical interests. And so I spend a lot of time thinking and reading about all of this new exciting technology. So if you are paying attention, if you're in this room, if you are watching this later, I don't need to tell you that ChatGPT has created a moral panic in the American Academy, particularly around the death of the college essay. And so as I was getting to the end of the semester here, I was trying to reckon with, how do I deal with this new technology in my classes, and how do I think about it, and how can I help my students take kind of these, what I do in my surviving social media class, and demystify some of the myths and sort of assuage some of the panic around this all-powerful tool. So You know what? It's not on. I do that. Okay, so I just want to talk really briefly about the Slate article, tell you a little bit about a class assignment I tried to do and thought was totally ingenious, and then it didn't end up working with this sort of lesson I hoped it would, and you'll see what I mean. And then actually just talk a little bit about how much harder this has gotten in terms of just detecting student use of ChatGPT. So in May, towards the end of the year, I was trying to figure out what to do with student papers. I didn't believe that I love my students, but the temptation is great. I understand, and I wanted to figure out how much do I need to be aware of ChatGPT, and how much power should I let it have over me to change the way I even create assignments. So I ended up writing this piece for Slate, and what I argued in it was that this is just one of many new technologies. The discourses around this new technology are ones we're really familiar with, even if we're not familiar with the technology itself. These techno-utopian, techno-dystopian frames come throughout all sorts of technology. But to speak about the AI and the generative AI as some all-powerful bogeyman wasn't really helpful to giving us the opportunity to critique and unmask its power. So that was kind of my argument. And I made the case that, you know what, students are going to use this anyway. I'm going to use this technology. So my policy would then be to have students be transparent about when they were using the technology. So I've been thinking a lot about this, and sorry, I forgot to jump ahead. But anyway, and the way this all kind of came about, the genesis of the article, was I actually got my first essay turned in that, like, this is just like not right. You know, something about the writing, it was too smooth with like not enough grammatical errors, right? But somehow not nuanced and substanced enough. And so there I had my first ChatGPT essay in my hands, and I'm not a bot, but I was able to pick out that it was written by one. And so that's kind of what led to the genesis. So thinking I'm all up on it, I came up with a final paper, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to show students what ChatGPT can't do. And so for my introduction to intro media studies class, I tried to figure out a way to help them understand the weaknesses of ChatGPT while still trying to integrate core course concepts. So what I did was I created the actual essay prompt I wished they would write an original essay for. And then I fed it to ChatGPT. And I created an essay prompt for it. I gave it the same essay prompt I would have given my students. And then I had it generate an essay. So the assignment was, and this is kind of abbreviated, but basically throughout the semester we've talked about the ways in which the media industries operate and the move from a mass nation of consensus narratives to one where narrow casting reigns. In this essay, you are to analyze your favorite musical artist. Clearly, Taylor Swift had to be the choice for chat, and create a plan for their world domination as they launch their newest album. The paper should be 6 to 8 pages double-spaced. You should rely on course material, any of the readings or suggested readings, and may conduct independent research from reputable digital sources, right? So this was kind of the assignment, right? And I gave it to Chat, and Chat generated an essay. And you can, like, it's like a solid B essay. And I don't know if I should just give you a little taste. I'll read you its bad thesis, I guess. The plan will involve the use of both new and old media technologies, fan power, and anticipation of bad actors online. I will also consider the interlinkages across different types of products, the potential impact of media conglomerates, and the cultural values that Swift both embraces and challenges. And so this essay is like about 600 to 800 words. I had asked for 6 to 8 pages double spaced, so this wasn't meeting it. There weren't any citations, but it actually like had the buzzwords of the class, you know, the key concepts in the class. So I would have given it like a B-ish, right? Like I think it was a solid B-ish. But like, you know what? Why don't I have my students grade Chat? And so what I did was I prepared a rubric that I would have used to grade one of their essays and had them grade. I know. I don't know how to make rubrics look nicer on the, I feel like this is a question for somebody else, but having never shown a rubric on a PowerPoint before, this is what you get. But basically, I made a rubric that had both grammar and style, but also content from the class. We do a lot of, the comment I get from students on evaluations about what they would recommend to other students is usually come to class, because I do a lot of in-class examples. And so I can immediately tell if a student hasn't been there if they don't reference one of the class examples. So in any event, this is important because it helped me detect cheating later on. So hold on to that thought. Anyway, point being, I created a rubric and I gave more specific, right? So if this was the style, I gave them, what are the conceptual things? So we were talking about the culture industry, just to give you a sense of what goes on in this class. Capitalism and the culture industries. And so excellent would be shows a clear understanding of the power and the potential of media conglomerates and their interlinkages as applied to the artist. Shows an understanding of the potential for product tie-ins with original ideas and connections, right? And articulates how different people working in different roles in the music industry, right? So there's like keys, you have to show knowledge about the topic. So I had my students go at it and give ChatGPT a grade based on the rubric. Then I actually had them edit the essay. So this was kind of like a three-pronged assignment. So first they graded it. I didn't tell them what I would have given it. And then they went back in to rewrite the essay using and adding where they felt using the rubric that the essay had fallen short. So this is kind of an example of what that assignment might look like. So this is from a student paper. The pink is all of the things they felt they needed to add to make this an A essay, right? So I'm thinking that I have crushed it. I have used ChatGPT in my class in like the best pedagogical way possible. I've given students an understanding of how to evaluate a paper, and then I've given them the chance to like take their core course knowledge and edit rather than write from scratch. So maybe I've not made them stressed, right? I have crushed this ChatGPT thing. Yeah, right. And so I was in this unlucky position of having a final exam on the very last day of spring finals. This is not great. Students had informed me at spring break that they were just going to be going home and they would not be on campus. And I could have insisted that they be on campus, but I wasn't going to do that. And I had long ago planned to do a virtual final because I think students can, open book. That's generally sometimes what I do. And I should have never done that, because despite the fact that I had actually shown all of these students that I'm aware of this technology, that this technology has limitations, and that they were actually able to spot and diagnose the limitations, I still had massive cheating violations on my final exam, which was a take-home final. So you can imagine how devastating this would be as an instructor, because I thought that I really understood how to use this stuff. And I thought my students understood what it could and couldn't be used for. So I flagged 11 students out of 23 for using ChatGPT. And I will tell you the tells. I never once spoke about Big Bang Theory in my class. There was a video that I showed of Tom Petty Into the Great Wide Open, which is an excellent overview of the old music industry that you absolutely had to reference in some way as having seen and been present in class, and students didn't reference that. And so there were tells throughout the students that had used ChatGPT, because there wasn't, like, the core course concepts were fine, but the way they were explained, it was clear to me that they weren't drawing on our original course content. So I would feed the answers back into chat. Sometimes chat would say it wrote it, sometimes it didn't. I would put it into the detectors, and the detectors would usually flag it. So I came up with 11 students. Keep in mind, I've just done an entire assignment where students theoretically see the weaknesses of this tool, and they should know that I know Like, I'm the professor that studies this stuff, that has written about this stuff. They got a copy of my Slate essay sent to them from my email, right? Like, they shouldn't be trying to pull the wool over my eyes, right? But it's still, this process flagged about 11 students. And I will say, of these, there was one extremely serious violation that was not exciting to deal with. What I wrote to students was, I was like, this is a new technology. I have flagged the potential that you may have used this in your exam. You can admit to using it and tell me why, or I can pursue further disciplinary actions. And all of the students that used it, I could tell, like, they're just like, I used it, I'm sorry. Don't put me in student conduct, right? So 7 students out of this admitted, but 4 of the students I flagged actually had used Grammarly. And the students that it flagged were students I knew were not first language English speakers or otherwise had sort of significant difficulties with their writing, but were kind of like not the kids I would have expected to be using ChatGPT. And invariably, they all said they used Grammarly. And this was a really important lesson for me because as we start to look for cheating and ChatGPT, there's a population of students that are relying on AI to help them compensate for all sorts of challenges that they faced when trying to write at the college level. So I think it's an important takeaway. So these tools are actually not working anymore. And I was glad that I used these detection tools when they were still seen as valid. I was glad I had tells like Tom Petty and The Big Bang Theory. But absent that, actually a professor over-accused his students of cheating. And actually OpenAI, which is sort of the company behind ChatGPT, has actually quietly pulled off its own ChatGPT essay detector. So you can no longer use OpenAI's technology to detect the presence of chat. So I don't really have a big takeaway except to say that I use this and I'm using it in ways that students in this university are using it. I am, for lots of reasons, taking a lot of math classes right now, and I'm using chat to derive answers for me, but I'm not cheating. I'm trying to actually understand what I'm doing, right? And so this is a very real technology that can actually serve as an at-home tutor, and you don't have to be mean-spirited in trying to cheat. I think it actually has a lot of potential, but it also gets things wrong too. So I'll leave you with this thought that I corrected ChatGPT and it apologized for the misunderstanding. I think we're at a status of misunderstanding, but I wanted to share this little set of trial and tribulations with you and maybe begin a discussion about going forward with this. Thanks.
One of the things that I really appreciated about your Slate article in May, done other ones, was that you point out that the problems with detecting ChatGPT is that you're using a machine to detect what a machine has done. And so your human instinct for the student not doing the work that you had required led to obviously trying to use a detector machine. But to me, that just sort of crystallized the problem that we're finding ourselves in, that we're using machines to help us with the problems of machines. And so is there any way that, you can say anything about how we can think about what that means? Because I just think that it's such a philosophical problem of having to rely on machines to correct the problems of machines.
Yeah, so I definitely understand. So you're kind of pointing out the tautology issue of a machine correcting a machine to spot a human being immoral, essentially, right? I have been reading a little bit about how we can reorient our thinking in relationship to machines, and There's an argument that we're undergoing a Copernican shift. Is it Copernican or Copernican? Copernican shift, where instead of being at the center of the universe, we are in a universe of machines. And increasingly, we will be needing to prove that we are human. And probably the best example of that is when you log on to something and have to find all of the lights, right? The street lights. It's actually not testing whether you can find all the street lights. What it's testing is, are you a slow human that has to take time to move the mouse around? That's literally what it's taking. And so I think once we reorient ourselves to realize that we increasingly spend almost all of our days immersed in a world of machines, and we think about what makes us human, that I think is a shift that we need to make in order to retake kind of at least analytical and critical control.
I'm interested in the concept of cheating, what it actually means. And you have categories of different types of cheating that you've detected. Extreme cheating being one, and regular common or garden cheating being another. I'm sort of interested what it means now. Does it mean that in the cheating case they were using ChatGPT, or using it and not acknowledging that they'd used it?
So in the case of extreme cheating, there were all of the classic tells. Dear professor, I need to get an A in this class. I can't use your Google Forms because my answers are too long. And I mean, unfortunately, that's going to flag a student. And when I looked at the answers, most students would just kind of copy and paste the first paragraph of Chat's answer. This was like the entire answer, right? And it was for every single question. And so on the level of egregious, that was kind of the gold standard of egregious. But what I meant by cheating more generally was, did it look like this answer? And I also had, by the way, that students could use course notes, but they shouldn't go to the internet because it will lead them astray. And I have consistently found that. And I generally don't penalize them if they go to the internet and they're wrong, because they're wrong, right? That's like not a good decision. Just go to your course notes. Everything's super organized, right? So the students that answered the question kind of off with references I would have never used flagged it to me. And those were usually sort of, most students wouldn't use it in every question. Most students did try to answer some of their own questions. Now the Grammarly students, all of the writing sounded a little funny, but that's because all of their writing sounds funny to begin with, right? And so I think one of the things we need to be really careful is we're already overly surveillant of more historically marginalized students who sometimes come into college with more challenges in terms of writing and preparation. And now this tool is going to flag students who are most vulnerable to kind of the surveillance academy. And I want to kind of surface that that is a real concern that, you know, I think you're right. There are shades of cheating. This is not something I consider cheating, but it is, you know, if it was an expository writing class, maybe it would be, right? But not in my book. So I don't know if that answers the question that you have, but students used it selectively and poorly.
You would permit the use of ChatGPT to some extent in the production.
So, you know, for this specific final exam, I did not allow it, but for my Future of Journalism class, where I had students prepare kind of like a consulting brief as the final project, I did allow them to use ChatGPT because it helped them get, you know, it was the first time many of them were trying to write like a consulting memo, and so they didn't really know how to do good bullet points. And so I was like, if you're going to use ChatGPT to condense your writing, this is actually a really good use of chat. But I do want to see you note for me either in an email or as a footnote where you used it. So I think that's the kind of transparency I'm thinking about. And I think it's also really great for assignments that can be oriented around it, like the one I did and thought would be prophylactic against what we saw in the final exam.
Where do you see things going, given the fact that ChatGPT will be considered primitive within a couple of years? And
Yeah. So I would flip that question around to a moral panic that we already know is a problem. And no, 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 no. Yeah,
I think moral panic is meant to diffuse the situation.
yeah.
This is not. I'm not in moral
All
panic.
right,
We are staring
right.
at a machine that can replace what we consider to be essential human characteristics. That's not a panic.
No, no, no. I completely, I didn't mean to kind of, but I guess what I was going to answer was by way of analogy, if that's, and I have sort of two things that I think maybe are responsive to that. The first is there was a while where algorithmic decision making, particularly around crime or like teacher performance or whether people would be eligible for parole, that AI was widely regarded as being less biased, and so we should just turn to AI. And actually, maybe like judges shouldn't even, like they should actually rely on the AI output of some of these, parole decisions rather than themselves, that the AI was kind of neutral. We now know, right, that no, it's based on problematic data and that the AI is not unbiased. And I think that I wonder if something like that, I don't know what the logical order might be that will create, like by analogy, what that logical shift might be that we discover. But I also want to caution against giving, I think most people who I've spoken with, say that journalists are doing a really terrible job covering AI and that they tend to conflate lots of principles and worries of different types of artificial intelligence when they're writing about AI. But I think that we are not at a world of artificial general intelligence.
Will we be there soon?
I'm not convinced that we will be.
Oh, I am. So assuming that eventually we get there, whether it's when I'm 70 or whether I'm 90,
Yeah.
it seems almost inevitable. Or are you saying that general intelligence will always be elusive for AI?
I love this question. I wonder, I think that this question around sentience will be a really interesting one. What I think
I'm
that,
not talking about sentience.
yeah,
I'm talking about general intelligence. Those are two separate things. Sentience, at least in my mind, has to do with being able to experience qualia and have a sense of experiencing the world. You don't need to have that to have general intelligence. General intelligence could be a series of modules that cover vision, speaking, analogies, mathematics, all these things compiled into one. You're already seeing it beginning
Mhm.
with ChatGPT being linked up with Midjourney or
Mhm.
DALL-E or things like that. And so general intelligence, viewed from that point of view, is not a matter of sentience. It's a matter of accumulating enough raw abilities that it can pass off as a human
Mhm.
in a general respect. So we're already, the pieces are coming together. And so sentience is a different matter. I'm
Okay.
talking about general intelligence. When that happens, and it seems to be inevitable almost, at least if you look at the current trajectory, what do we do then?
So I think that it's dangerous to presume inevitability because that gives a path dependency to and takes away the agency of individuals to resist and make changes. I have a whole other theory about how the writers' strike is like the first stake against this world of no longer being able to detect creative output as being human or not human. Though I do think this question of the deception capacity is an old one, right? The Turing test is like 1955, right? And it's people think that it's about. I'm saying this more for like people think that the Turing test is about like can we tell if something is human or not? But it's really about is this machine deceiving me into thinking it could be human? And so that capacity for deception is one that I think we've been reckoning with for a while. I don't have an answer for you, but I think that what we're talking about is we're at a constitutive moment, like we have been in many media technologies. And I think this is why it's helpful to kind of have a history of technology perspective. But different countries made lots of different decisions around the telegraph, right? Like how they decided to implement the telegraph. And the decisions that the United States made around initial public investment and privatization, and the decisions that the UK made around public investment and less privatization, though I feel like I should be careful because I've got somebody who's a British historian in the room, so I don't want to like overassume my knowledge. But anyway, right? Different legislative regimes, cultural factors led to different cultural norms around adaptation, but also different regulatory frameworks. And so I think that we need to remember we have agency, and I think that creators are going to be kind of the forefront of activism. And I think that I think one, right, it's seeing creators step up and think about what their future looks like and seeing them as the modes of resistance, because the inevitability doesn't mean the widespread use, right? There could be regulatory frameworks where we never see this used beyond weapons of mass destruction, right? So I think maybe that's one thing. But yeah, I don't know. I think if anyone had the answer to that, we'd all, that'd be a great thing to have an answer to. But I just think that we can't let inevitability circumscribe our agency. And I really do believe that. But I do think this Copernican shift is an important framework to resituate ourselves in, because if we think about the end of the Anthropocene, right? Like the end of man, the measure of the world, that changes our framework for thinking about what we do uniquely in the universe. And I think that we're gonna have to double down and think about what is it that makes us unique in the universe. And that's all I got. I don't have anything else.